Hey, what's up everybody, Crazy here, back into Borderlands 3, and today we're going to take a look at the best and the worst weapons added in the Moxxi DLC. There's about 10 to 15 of these that have been added with the new DLC, and some of them are extremely powerful, while others are not so great. That is why in today's video, I'm going to go over my ranking of the best. We're going to go over a top 5 of the ones that I found myself using the most, and towards the end of the video, I'm also going to go over the others that didn't perform that great. So, if you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up on it would be super appreciated, and let's get to it. Now I want to start things off with one of my favorite weapons in the current DLC, even though it's not a top damage dealer or anything, but this is the Slow Hands Hyperion Shotgun, and it seems that it made a return from Borderlands 2, and it basically drops from Dazzle in the Impound Deluxe map. So if you are farming for the Mayor Challenge, you are going to eventually get this, as it's quite a decent drop chance from this enemy, but it can spawn with any elemental, it seems, though in my opinion Cryo is the best for this weapon. I'm not really sure why, it just fits this weapon so well. Maybe because of its slow traveling bullets that explode upon impact. You're kind of creating all of these effects, easily spreading all of that elemental damage and the effect, so you can further freeze more enemies at the same time, leaving them open for a ton more damage. But otherwise, the damage over here is pretty decent, especially since it's coupled with a rather high rate of fire for this type of weapon, as well as a decent magazine size. So yeah, it's not OP or anything, it doesn't melt enemies either, but it can definitely hold on its own against this type of content. Moving on to the number 4 spot, it's the Craps Pistol, which is a Torgue weapon. This drops from Jackbot, so this is going to be pretty much towards the end, but this is also a wall drop, so chances are that you encountered at least a few of these on your way towards the end of the DLC. But it's a rather easy drop. Apparently it can spawn with any elemental, though in my case I mostly seen a drop either with Incendiary or with no elemental at all. But the cool part about this weapon is that it shoots projectile bullets that explode upon impact, with a chance to shoot a circle of about 5 bullets at the same time. And here is basically where the spike of damage comes from these random bullets, these circle of bullets that make it pretty good against the casino enemies. At random times you might find yourself not spawning that circle, so you might suffer a little bit in DPS, but once you do, there is also a chance to like spawn multiple of these circles. Like sometimes you can see these circles spawning one after the other, and it pretty much melts enemies as long as all of the 5 bullets hit them. So you will want to like kinda stay in the close to medium range if you want to hit all of them. On top of its regular impact mode, it also has a sticky mode that you can always switch to, and yeah, it works exactly how it's advertised. You can stick all of those bullets into the enemy and have them explode as you recharge. But otherwise, I like this weapon, and if you manage to get it with a good anointed effect, you can definitely make it a beast for this DLC and pretty much for any other type of content, with very few exceptions in here and there. Moving on to the 3rd spot, we have the Ion Laser, which is a Melee SMG. This drops from Evil St. Lawrence in the Spendopticon Market District. Again, if you're doing the challenge for the Mayor, chances are that you already got a couple of these, but otherwise this is like the best method to farm it. And it can spawn with different elementals, of course, since it's a melee one. You can switch between the 2 random ones that this weapon spawns with. So for example, if you get something with corrosive, it is most definitely going to be amazing against the loader bots. It shoots continuous beams of energy at a rather high range, so the range over here, it is quite impressive. It's also shooting these orbs depending on the beam duration. Once you stop shooting the beam, it's going to shoot these orbs into the enemy. So I believe that in this case it takes into account how many seconds you have shot the beam continuously. For example, if you shot it for more than 1 second, you can kind of shoot one of these orbs for 2 seconds, 2 orbs, 3 and 4 and so on. So I was able to even see about 6 orbs at the same time after continuously shooting the beam and then letting it go. So yeah, definitely really awesome. Those orbs also deal a ton more damage than the beam, it seems, and it kind of provides a nice little spike in damage if you happen to fight against an enemy that doesn't die that easily. But otherwise it has a large magazine size, and even though the damage over here is rather small, of about only 200, it is definitely very good against the loader bots, especially if you get one with corrosive, which is something that I also got in this case. So it can definitely melt some of these enemies quite easily, I might say so. Coming up on the second spot, this is a really tough choice, but you know, hard choices have to be made. Of course, I'm going to include this, the lucky number 7, the Jacob's pistol that drops from Scrap Trap Prime in the compactor map, and this is actually quite a surprising weapon. I actually love this quite a bit, especially on my flak, and it's quite interesting the way it works. I don't think we have any other weapon that works the way this does. So basically, when you're reloading your weapon, it has a chance to apply one or maybe even multiple of the following buffs, including bonus crit chance, explosive ammunition, ricochet bullets, full auto, amp damage, or 7 projectiles at the same time. So what this means is that you kinda have a chance either to deal regular damage or a chance to deal a ton of damage, especially those 7 projectiles. It seems that these are absolutely insane. You're going to see a huge amount of spike in damage since, well, it's basically you shooting 7 more times compared to what you shoot normally. But I believe that there's also a chance for it to actually spawn multiple of these buffs. For example, I saw something like 7 projectiles as well as the ricochet bullets spawning both at the same time for the same clip. So it can definitely buff up that damage, and you can actually melt enemies quite easily with this. But again, it's lucky number 7, so all of this depends on the luck. That is why I said that the RNG gods might not always favor you, but otherwise the damage per bullet over here is pretty high, over 1000. It also has a decent accuracy and handling, but the fire rate and the magazine size is what makes it so good and compensates for that RNG over there. So even on its own, it does deal good damage, though it's those lucky buffs that actually bring it to the next level. But this brings us to the number 1 spot, which has to go to the Ion Cannon Vladov weapon, which drops from the Fabricator in Jack's secret map. It's quite a high chance to drop from this boss. As a matter of fact, I've seen it drop almost every other run, so quite easy to get. The only thing that you kind of have to worry about is maybe the anointed effect, since you will want to farm for the best anointed effect, as well as the best stat bonuses over there. But the way this works is really simple. You charge it up and shoot this high damaging projectile that travels pretty fast. It also goes quite far, and it can deal as high as 1 million plus damage. I'm not even kidding. It deals a ton of damage, especially to the loader bots, and it also does AoE. The damage over there is insane. So not only are you erasing the enemy, the primary target, you're also pretty much deleting everything around it, which is absolutely crazy. Again, a really awesome weapon. The only downside over here is that you kinda have to charge it up, and the charge up time is rather high. So the damage per bullet over here is pretty high. I'm pretty sure that I had a different version of this weapon that only shot 1 bullet at the same time and not 2, as it's the case with this one. But otherwise, it has a pretty good accuracy and also a rather large magazine size for this type of weapon. But otherwise, again, it's absolutely insane. Now, of course, these are not the only weapons that have been added in the new DLC. There's actually about a handful more that you can grab, but unfortunately I didn't find them to be more spectacular than the ones I already talked about. As a matter of fact, a couple of them that I thought would be great actually ended up being pretty mediocre at best, but a couple of them that can work pretty fine. One of them is the auto aim. This drops from Freddy, and it's actually quite an easy drop. It seems that it's a guaranteed drop that almost happens every run, so you're going to have an easy time to get this. It's a very unique assault rifle in the sense that it kind of has auto aim bullets, so the damage is pretty high. The only downside of this is that well, you cannot shoot in the weak points, since this auto aim tends to go towards the center of mass, so it's going to go into the center of the enemy that you're shooting, which is not always going to be a critical point, but otherwise it deals some good damage. If you manage to get it with a proper anointed effect, you can definitely make it work. But again, since it's a sniper rifle, the magazine size is going to be rather low, your ammo is also going to be rather low, so you're going to go through it really easily before even clearing out the enemies. So yeah, it's not the greatest, but there are worse than this. There's also the Nukem rocket launcher, which is an alternative to the Ion Cannon. As a matter of fact, the Nukem is quite a fun gun. This drops from Loco Chantel right before Freddy, and it deals quite a lot of damage. I mean, it's spectacular to look at. It causes a huge nuke-like explosion that seems to be dealing quite a lot of damage. Not as much as the Ion Cannon, but I did see numbers like 500k or 750k, which are pretty good on their own. And yeah, there's also the downside of the fact that it tends to drop a little bit further away from where you actually aim it with the crosshair, so you might want to aim it down a little bit, as it's not going to travel to the precise location it's showing, since it's kind of like behaving like a mortar. Otherwise, the rest of the weapons on the list are pretty disappointing, at the very least from my limited testing, and it was actually quite disappointing to see cheap tips as well as the other one called the Boomer not behaving as well as I was expecting. At the very least in the case of Boomer, this is dealing explosive damage. It pretty much shoots explosive bullets, and I genuinely thought that this would be a good weapon, but it seems that it's not that great at clearing out the enemies. Maybe I'm using it wrong, but I didn't find it to be that spectacular. I hope that this gets buffed because it definitely looks pretty interesting. The same goes with the cheap tips. I also thought that this would be amazing, especially in prolonged fights, because this drops those tips on the ground that all give you like 10% damage increase for about 12 seconds. I thought that these would stack. I'm not entirely sure exactly if these do stack or not, but I thought that this would increase the damage by quite a lot, especially since the damage per bullet is pretty decent. But again, it didn't perform to my expectations, which is why yeah, I'm not using it that much. The same goes with the Heartbreaker. It's quite an interesting shotgun. I mean, it shoots bullets in forms of heart, it can heal you a little bit, but the leech is rather low. I believe that is like, well, 1-2%, I'm not entirely sure, but it barely heals you, so it's not going to be that helpful. Also, the damage doesn't seem to be that big. And finally, we also have the Creamer, which is the third RPG that you can get in the DLC, but when you compare it with the Nukem, or even better with the Iron Laser, it falls off quite a bit. It works in a very interesting way in the sense that it kinda explodes mid-range, and the first rocket splits into 2 additional rockets, so you can kinda make use of that and hit the enemy like 3 times, first with the initial explosion and then with the 2 other projectiles. You kinda need to be a little bit further back from the enemy so that you're not too close to him. So this works best at a medium to high range so that you can take advantage of all of those explosions, but those explosions can definitely add up to about 500,000 damage, though again, when you compare that with the Iron Laser or with the Nukem, which deal a lot more damage way more easily, it's going to fall off quite a bit. But yeah, these were all the weapons in the new DLC, of course with the exception of the 2 thematic ones that you get from completing the crew challenges, but otherwise these were the best and the worst weapons currently in the DLC, at the very least in my opinion. Let me know down below, in your opinion or from your experience, what are the best weapons that have been added in the new DLC. Comment down below with your favorite weapons, and in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and peace!